The moment the coffee hit her skin, three things happened. Amina's hands started blistering, Julian Harcourt started laughing, and the most feared man in the Korean underworld decided someone was about to die tonight. Min Seok had been watching from his corner booth, perfectly still, his cane corso at his feet, waiting to see if anyone in this room full of powerful people would help the woman they all pretended not to see. And when no one moved, when Julian actually smiled and raised his phone to record her pain, something ancient and merciless woke up behind Min Seok's eyes. By the time Julian noticed the man with the snake tattoo standing behind him, his wrist was already broken and his father's entire empire had about 72 hours left to exist. But here's what nobody tells you about powerful men who think they're untouchable. They always underestimate the quiet ones watching from the corners, and Julian Harcourt was about to learn why that's a fatal mistake. Subscribe now, because what happens next involves corrupt police, a 72-hour countdown, and a senator who's about to discover that some people's employees are protected by something far more terrifying than labor laws. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I want to say hello and know how far this story reaches. Min Seok moved before anyone could process what was happening. One moment he was standing still. The next, his hand shot out and seized Julian's wrist with surgical precision. The crack echoed through the ballroom like a gunshot. Julian's scream was high-pitched, animal, pathetic. He dropped to his knees, cradling his shattered wrist as bone fragments ground together beneath swelling flesh. Min Seok hadn't changed expression, hadn't even raised his voice. He simply released Julian's wrist and watched him collapse the way someone might observe an insect they'd just crushed. But what Julian didn't know, what none of them knew, was that breaking his wrist wasn't the punishment, it was the opening move. "Dad!" Julian sobbed. "Dad!" Senator Marcus Harcourt materialized from the crowd, and for 3 seconds you could see him doing the calculation, his son on the floor, this Korean man with blood on his rings, that massive dog whose eyes promised death. And he made the mistake that would cost him everything. He chose arrogance over caution. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" the senator demanded. "Do you have any idea who I am?" Min Seok turned his gaze to the senator and his voice was soft, terrifyingly soft. "I know exactly who you are, Senator. The question is whether you know who I am." Watch what happens when recognition finally hits. The senator's eyes traveled to the snake tattoo, to the scarred knuckles, to the dog that could tear a man's throat out before security cleared their holsters. And suddenly he understood. This wasn't some random Good Samaritan defending a waitress. This was territory. This was ownership. This was a predator reclaiming stolen property. "You're," the senator started. "Leaving," Min Seok finished. He turned to Amina, who was still frozen, still clutching her burned chest. "We're leaving. Now." Here's what everyone in that room understood in that moment, but nobody dared to say out loud. When a man like Min Seok Kang publicly claims someone, when he breaks bones in front of witnesses, when he walks out with a woman under his protection, he's not rescuing her. He's declaring war on anyone who touches his property again. And the senator? He just became an enemy. The limousine was waiting outside like a hearse. Inside, the silence was suffocating. Amina pressed herself against the door, and Min Seok's next words changed everything. "Am I not paying you enough?" Not concern, not, "Are you okay?" Not, "Let me help you." Fury. Because to men like Min Seok, damaged property is a personal insult. And Amina was about to discover that being saved by a monster means you now belong to one. "I needed extra money," she whispered. "It was just one night." "You didn't think I would be there," he interrupted. "You didn't think I would see you reduced to this. You didn't think I would care." But here's the twist nobody saw coming. He didn't care about her pain. He cared that someone else inflicted it. "How much do you need?" "What?" "The debt." "How much?" And just like that, with 5 words, Min Seok transformed from savior to collector. Because he wasn't offering help, He was offering a chain. $38,000, she said. My brother's scholarship fell through. If he drops out, they'll deport him. 5 seconds later, her phone buzzed. A deposit. $50,000. Consider it an advance on your salary, Min-seok said. Extended contract. You don't leave my employment until I say you're free, understood? It wasn't a gift. It was a trap. And Amina just walked into it with her eyes wide open because drowning people don't refuse life preservers even when they come with anchors attached. But what she didn't know yet, what would become clear in the next 72 hours, was that Min-seok didn't just save her to own her. He saved her because someone threatened his household. And when you threaten what belongs to Min-seok Kang, you don't just lose. You cease to exist. The penthouse was exactly as Amina remembered. Cold, perfect, expensive. But tonight was different. She wasn't here to clean. She was here because he'd brought her here, and the distinction mattered. Min-seok returned with a first aid kit that looked military grade. Sit. She obeyed, and then he knelt. Actually knelt. This man who'd broken Julian's wrist without blinking. And when his fingers moved to unbutton her uniform, she understood this wasn't medical care. It was assessment. This will scar, he said, dabbing burn gel onto her skin. Not badly, but you'll have marks, reminders. When those burns heal, Min-seok promised, Julian Harcourt will look worse than this. And right then, Amina should have asked the question that was screaming in her mind. What exactly are you planning to do to them? But she didn't ask. Because part of her already knew. And part of her, the part that had just been burned and humiliated and threatened, wanted to know he would make them suffer. That's when you realize this isn't a rescue story. It's a revenge story. And Amina just became complicit. 3 days later, they came for her. 2 police officers at 6 a.m. with badges and threats. We understand you're considering pressing charges against Julian Harcourt. We're here to strongly advise against that. Then came the kill shot. Your brother Marcus. He's here on a student visa, isn't he? Student visas are fragile things. One complaint to immigration services and that visa gets revoked. Marcus gets deported, and you'd never get him back. Everyone says the powerful protect their own. That's true. But here's what they don't tell you. Sometimes the powerful destroy their own when challenged. The senator wasn't protecting his son by threatening Amina's brother. He was signing his own death warrant. Amina called Min-seok with shaking hands. Police came. They said they'll deport Marcus if I press charges. They said the senator has friends in immigration. The silence on the other end lasted 5 terrible seconds. Then, what did the officers look like? She described them, and Min-seok's voice went flat. Emotionless. The voice of a man who'd just made a decision that would ruin lives. Stay in your apartment. Lock your door. They made a mistake. A very serious mistake. Here's what nobody tells you about men like Min-seok. They don't fight fair. They don't fight clean. And they don't fight within the system. They buy the system. While Amina sat terrified in her apartment, Min-seok made 3 phone calls. 3. That's all it took. First call. Marcus Johnson was on a private plane to Vancouver within 6 hours, enrolled in a better university, fully funded, completely untouchable. Second call. The 2 corrupt officers received visits that made them submit resignations by morning. Third call. Min-seok bought the senator's debts. Every single one. But removing the leverage wasn't enough. Not for Min-seok. Because the senator had made this personal. He'd threatened family. He'd tried to use the system as a weapon. And Min-seok was about to teach him that some weapons cut both ways. The package arrived at the senator's office at 3 p.m., a black box with a blood-red ribbon. Inside, Julian's $340,000 watch, destroyed with methodical precision. And beneath it, a single strand of dog hair. The senator's hands trembled as he read the note. Your officers made threats. I return them. Call off your dogs, Senator, or I'll show you what mine can really do. MK asterisk. But Senator Harcourt didn't get powerful by backing down. He got powerful by eliminating threats. So he called in professionals. 5 former military contractors. 7-figure contract. 1 target. Min Seok Kang. They breached the penthouse at 2 a.m. with suppressed weapons and military precision. And they walked straight into a trap. "You're in my home," Min Seok whispered in the lead contractor's ear as he shattered his wrist. "Did you really think I wouldn't know?" The lights blazed on, revealing a dozen armed men who'd been waiting in the shadows. The contractors were outgunned, outsmarted, and about to become messengers. "Here's what's going to happen," Min Seok said. "You're going to tell me everything. Then you're going to return to the senator and deliver a message." "We don't talk," one contractor said. "Professional courtesy." Min Seok smiled. "Phantom. I need to be honest with you about something. Up until this point, you might have thought Phantom was just a guard dog. Just muscle. Just intimidation. You were wrong. The cane Corso emerged from the shadows, and even these hardened killers shifted nervously. Because Phantom wasn't trained to attack. He was trained to hunt. Specific body parts. Hamstrings. Disabling, but not fatal. Gives you time to watch what's happening to you." 20 minutes later, the contractors told Min Seok everything. The payment. The plan. The senator's direct involvement. And that's when the gloves came off. "The senator just declared war," Min Seok said. "So we end it. Tonight." The convoy arrived at the senator's estate at midnight. 3 black SUVs. No stealth, no subtlety. This wasn't an infiltration. This was a procession. Here's the difference between power and authority that nobody teaches you. Authority is what the senator had. Titles, positions, legal protections, political connections. Power is what Min Seok had. The ability to walk through security without firing a shot, to break into panic rooms without leaving evidence, to dismantle empires while everyone watches. The senator's security took one look at Min Seok and his cane corso and made the smart choice. They stepped aside. "Find the sun," Min Seok ordered. "Phantom. Hunt." The cane corso's ears perked forward, his nose went to the ground, and then he moved, prowling, tracking, hunting through the mansion like a ghost. Julian's scent led them to his panic room, biometric lock, reinforced door, designed to be impenetrable. Min Seok cracked it in 30 seconds with a single phone call. Inside, Julian huddled in the corner, his broken wrist still in a cast, and the color drained from his face. "Do you remember Amina?" Min Seok asked. "The woman you burned?" "I didn't mean, it was just—" "Your father sent assassins to my home tonight," Min Seok interrupted. "He declared war. This is me accepting." But here's the twist. Min Seok didn't touch Julian. Didn't need to. He simply let Phantom take 3 steps forward, and Julian's nerves shattered, completely. He screamed, scrambled, ran in blind panic through his own mansion with nowhere to go. Because sometimes the cruelest punishment isn't violence, it's fear. Pure, primal, unending fear. Min Seok found the senator in his office, whiskey in hand, trying to project control he no longer possessed. "This is a mistake," the senator said. "I have connections that go all the way to Washington." "I know." Min Seok settled into a chair, uninvited. "Let me tell you what I've been doing for the past 3 days. I bought your debts." The senator's face went white. "Excuse me?" "Your bank. Henderson Trust. I bought controlling interest. As of 6 hours ago, I own your debts. All $47.3 million of them." Here's where the senator made his final fatal mistake. He thought he could negotiate. "What do you want? Money? Political favors? Name your price." But Min Seok didn't want his money, didn't want his connections. He wanted something money couldn't buy. Consequence. "You have 72 hours to pay," Min Seok said, "or I foreclose on everything. This estate, your campaign, your son's trust, your offshore accounts, All of it. You're destroying me, the senator whispered. No, I'm teaching you. Min-seok's eyes were merciless. There are limits to power. Actions have consequences, even for senators. He walked to the door, paused. Your son is somewhere in this mansion, crying and broken. I didn't touch him. The fear was punishment enough. But every time you look at him, you'll remember I was here, that I walked through your security, into your home, and took everything. By morning, the financial news reported unusual trading around Henderson Trust. By evening, political blogs buzzed about corruption investigations. By the next day, the senator's allies were distancing themselves. Min-seok had started a controlled demolition, and he watched it unfold with the detached interest of someone watching an old building collapse. 5 days after, the officers threatened her. Amina received a call. Come here, Min-seok said. No explanation, just a command. She found him by the windows, backlit by afternoon sun, holding a folder. Inside, a receipt. University of British Columbia, Marcus Johnson. Tuition paid in full. Housing paid. $3,000 monthly stipend. My brother, she whispered. You saved him. I removed the senator's leverage, Min-seok corrected. Marcus is safe. He doesn't know about any of this. Why? She asked. Why would you do all this? And his answer changed everything. Because you're mine. And I protect what's mine. Not because you needed help. Not because it was right. Because you're mine. You were my housekeeper, Min-seok said, cupping her face. Now you're something else. Something more valuable. You don't work for me anymore. You exist under my care. I still owe you $50,000, debt forgiven. You'll stay here, in the penthouse, your own room. But where I can see you, where I know you're safe. You're not asking, she realized. You're telling me. Yes. No apology, no pretense. The choice that isn't. What do you want from me? I want you safe. I want you here. And eventually, I want you to understand that belonging to me isn't a cage. It's the only real freedom you've ever had. She should have been angry, should have pushed back. But all she could think about was her brother safe in Vancouver, the senator destroyed, Julian broken, the officers facing charges. Min-seok had dismantled every threat to her world with surgical precision. And if I say no, if I want to leave, then you leave. I won't hold you prisoner. His thumb traced her pulse point. But you won't leave, because out there you're vulnerable. But here, with me, you're untouchable, and you'll never find that safety anywhere else. He was right. God help her, he was right. I don't love you, she said. This isn't romance. This is transaction, power dynamics, protection in exchange for belonging. His voice was steady. I know what this is, and I'm not asking you to love me. I'm asking you to accept what I'm offering. She thought about everything. Marcus safe, her debts cleared, the burns on her chest healing, the police who'd threatened her now facing charges, the senator whose empire crumbled in 72 hours, and Min-seok kneeling before her, tending her wounds with careful hands. Okay, she whispered. I'll stay. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Satisfaction, possession, not love, not romance, ownership. Your room is the second door on the left. Your belongings arrive this afternoon. Phantom will protect you when I'm not here. The cane corso patted over, pressing against her leg, and she understood. This creature was loyalty made flesh, protection without question. Just like Min-seok himself. Later that night, Amina sat in her new room, bigger than her entire old apartment, and let herself cry. Not from sadness, not from fear, from relief. Because for the first time in her life, she was safe. Her brother was safe. The constant terror was over. She'd traded freedom for security, independence for protection, and she didn't regret it. In the living room, Min-seok stood at his window, watching the city lights. "She'll adjust," Park said. "She's stronger than most people," Min-seok replied. "She'll thrive here. What I'm offering isn't charity, it's alliance. You care about her. I care about what's mine." He turned from the window. "Arrange permanent security. Eyes on her every time she leaves. No one touches her. Not ever again." Park left, and Min-seok returned to his contemplation of the city. Phantom padded back to sit beside him. The senator had learned his lesson in ruin and disgrace. Julian learned it in fear and broken bones. Anyone else who tried would learn it in blood, because this was never a story about rescue. It was a story about possession, about power, about what happens when you damage something that belongs to a monster. Amina was his now, his to protect, his to provide for, his to keep safe from a world that had tried and failed to break her. And Min-seok would burn down anyone who tried to take her from him. Not because he loved her, because she was his. The city glittered before him, full of people who thought wealth made them gods. Full of Julian Harcourts who believed they were untouchable. Full of Senator Harcourts who thought position equaled immunity. They were all wrong. And somewhere in that city, in penthouses and mansions and corridors of power, other men like Julian were learning a simple truth. The most dangerous person in any room isn't the loudest, isn't the richest, isn't the one with the most security. It's the quiet one watching from the corner booth. The one with the snake tattoo and the killer dog. The one who waits and watches and strikes when you've forgotten. He's there. Subscribe because there are more stories like this. Stories about power and consequence, about monsters who protect and angels who destroy. Comment where you're from so I can say hello. And remember, in a world of Julian Harcourts, pray you never damage something that belongs to a Min-seok Kong, because when you do, you don't just lose, you cease to exist.